It's Monday the 14th of December. You might think some things never change. Spurs snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. We've heard that one before. And then drew old foes Fiorentina in the Europa League. Deja vu, anyone? But most importantly, your week starts as normal with an hour's worth of Spurs chat, debates and features. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham.
Welcome to the podcast, guys. What a few days it's been. Don't forget, we want you to get in touch and involved in the show. So if you like what you hear, get in touch with e-Spurs. There's multiple ways to stay in touch with all things e-Spurs. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at e_Spurs, on our Facebook, which is /e-Spurs page. And new for this season, you can follow us on Google Plus and YouTube. Grab the links for those on our website, which is espurs.blogspot.co.uk. There's loads of other links, loads of other social media platforms out there available for you. Pinterest, Instagram, the lot. Get involved with the e-Spurs. Tonight we'll be reviewing the collapse on Sunday against relegation contenders Newcastle, giving you our team's thoughts on today's Europa League round of 32 draw and the FA Cup draw against Leicester, asking you to get involved in our new Talking Point feature, which will be starting tonight. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also be previewing Pochettino's Southampton reunion next weekend. Wow, how are we going to get all of that into an hour? Well, I'm sure we can, and we've got the right team here to do that for you tonight. As always, it's your e-Spurs panel. It's Jason, Jon and Ricky. How you doing, fellas?
Hello, mate. All good.
Not as good as we were previous weeks.
I have to echo that.
Yeah, we was mentioning before the show, wasn't we, lads? It's same old Spurs. Back to the Spurs that we know and love. Without further ado, let's get on with the show. A few bits of admin before we start, guys. First up, I want to read out a message we've had from Hotspur US, which is a great Twitter account, always publishing stuff, obviously, from the US. It's at Spurs_US, and they've sent us a chart, a list of the US television viewers. It's really interesting stuff. Have a look at it if you can. In the US, American audiences for the Premier League, which is, I believe, shown on NBC over there. Apparently more than 13.1 million US viewers watch Spurs play in 39 matches in 2015. So not bad at all, not shabby stuff. 13.1 million. And just looking at another image he sent in to us, Spurs currently average viewers for the US audience is 461,000. The most over there, interestingly enough, surprise, surprise, Manchester United, 663,000. That's the average audience by club through to game week 15 this season. So we're averaging 461,000. So not bad at all. And, you know, it's been said about our US following growing all the time over there. We've, of course, had our connections with American players in the past. So all good to see. And if you're following and listening from United States, then welcome to you and keep flying the flag over there, guys, as we always say. So that's Spurs_US. Give them a follow, guys, and check that out if you can. Also, an email I want to read out we've had in this week. Don't forget, you can contact us, guys, if you've got anything you want to have your say on via email. That's e-spurs@live.co.uk. From a lady by the name of Wendy, who's from Kentucky, back to the USA, says, could you read the guys' Twitter handles out on the podcast, please, as I always seem to miss them. Lads, if we could have your Twitter accounts. Let's go to Ricky first.
Yep, so my Twitter handle is Rick Spur, so it's pretty much as it says. So that's RICK and Spur, SPUR, all one word, Rick Spur.
Fantastic, good stuff. And Jon?
Mine is Jon THFC, which is at JON THFC.
Brilliant stuff. And last but by no means least, Jason?
It's E_Spurs Thailand.
Nice and easy. Great stuff. The man who loves Spurs so much, he opened his own Spurs shop. Brilliant stuff, lads. And don't forget, you can contact the guys. If you've got anything to say about the show, you've got their Twitter accounts now. Get in touch with the guys and let them know if you agree, disagree, indifferent to what they say on the show tonight. Last but by no means least, I want to mention a very happy birthday to our former winger, Chris Waddle, who's 55 today. It's been great to see some pictures of Chrissy Waddle on Twitter, no doubt enjoying his day up there. So that's the admin done for today, guys. Let's crack on with the show. The 2-1 defeat to Newcastle. Jason, coming to you first of all, mate. Did Newcastle win this, or did we throw it away?
No, you have to say we threw it away. The first half, Newcastle didn't really offer too much at all. Although there was signs that they weren't quite going to park the bus, which I was quite pleased at. But for 30 minutes, we pressed, we won the ball with high tempo and that, but didn't really do anything with it. And then we had that little spell before half time when suddenly Lamela creates a couple of saves. We score the goal, the Danny Rose ball that flashes across goal, and you thought, right, this is where we want to be going into half time. But the second half was so poor, and we allowed Newcastle to get themselves back into the game. And in the end, they probably did deserve to win the game, because the second half they were the only side that looked like they were scoring.
Yeah, if ever the term "a game of two halves" can be used, certainly yesterday, wasn't it? And one player I do want to praise from yesterday and from the last few weeks was Eric Lamela. I think this is a guy that I've certainly slated in the past. From yesterday, there's not too many players you can argue came out of the game with much credit, but I think this guy, Eric Lamela, he doesn't stop running, does he? And he's certainly improved technically. His confidence seems to improve, and despite everything falling apart around him yesterday, this, absolutely fantastic. Got to give him praise. It's brilliant to see how much the guy's developed. Of course, got his hat trick in the week, and so yeah, absolutely brilliant to see. I just wanted to mention that because there were so many yesterday that came out of the game with poor performances. So that's definitely worth a mention. Ricky, as I say, there were players that went missing yesterday, the likes of Ericsson, Kane. Why were there so many players yesterday that seemed to not turn up, especially in that second half?
Yeah, Andy, it's difficult to really put your finger on. It's been something that I've been thinking about really all day. I just get this feeling with Spurs that, especially with Christian Eriksen, that when he doesn't play well, we don't seem to play well. And it's been a while now where last season we had Eriksen digging us out with last-minute winners. He seems to go missing at vital times in the games, and especially yesterday in the second half. And I think even more so yesterday, we really did feel the impact of not having Moussa Dembele there. It's just credit to how Dembele has grown as to how much we miss him on the field. And I think yesterday, although Tom Carroll had, for me, quite a good game, and I couldn't quite understand the hate before the game as to why he was starting. I thought he played very well during the week at Monaco. Warranted his start, in my opinion. But yeah, I think we really, really missed Dembele. His drives to get us forward, and also his defensive play. I think Dyer wasn't as good as what he was in previous weeks. The problem is we're a team, Andy, that when our main players have off days, it's very difficult for us to, dig ourselves out of it and get a result. And I just think yesterday, especially when Newcastle got that equaliser, we just seemed to hit the self-destruct button. And we just seemed to panic as if we was in that kind of knockout game where we had to go for the 3 points and, not settle for a point. Now, no one wants to settle for a point at home to Newcastle because, like you've said, they're relegation candidates. They're in the bottom 3. We should be winning these type of games. But there also needs to be that discipline, that focus, that sometimes when you can't win a game, you don't want to lose it. And I just felt at 1-1, Newcastle had that opportunity with Mitrovic in the middle where he miskicked. That was the warning. That was the warning right at the end. And still, we went gung-ho and we ended up losing the game. Now, listen, for me personally, disappointing draws are not as bad as losses. And I'm frustrated yesterday that we didn't get a draw out the game because you have to admit Newcastle played well in that second half, but we really, as a side of how good we've been this season, to lose our home record to them in the manner we did is very, very frustrating.
It certainly is gutting, isn't it? As you say, especially to a side who a lot of people see as relegation contenders this season. If you're going to lose your record, you certainly don't want to do it to a side like that. It was painful coming so late as well, wasn't it? It was. And as we mentioned earlier on in the show, it was the Spurs of old, unfortunately, turned up again at White Hart Lane. John, in terms of the players yesterday, I've got a theory on this one. We obviously changed the midfield around slightly. We did a bit of a shuffle with Dembele not playing there. We moved Carroll into central midfield alongside Dyer, and Dyer's come in for a little bit of criticism today and yesterday for not having played so well. I've got a theory that's maybe because he obviously didn't have his usual wingman alongside him, if you like, in Dele Alli. Personally, I would have gone with putting Carroll further forward and bringing Dele Alli back to that usual position alongside him. Pochettino chose not to. He put Dele Alli further forward. He almost at times was playing in that striking role, wasn't he, in the first half? Did Pochettino maybe make a little bit of a mistake in that one?
I'm not sure he made a mistake. I can understand why Tom Carroll got the start. As we've already said, he was good against Monaco. He looked really assured and very composed most of the time. But I just think it was... I personally would have put Ali next to Dyer and brought Son in from the start. But, I think, so many young players we've had over the past 2 years, they come in, they make a good impression. You got to give them another go. There's no point in keep just playing them in the Europa games and the odd appearance. They're only going to grow and get better when they're given a proper chance. I think I'd probably, out of all the players that impressed against Monaco, I would have been more inclined to bring Josh Onomah in from the start anyway, more so than Tom Carroll, especially considering, like you said, that Dyer and Ali have looked really good as a partnership this season. I do think that upset the sort of axis of the team. And I think, as we've already touched upon, I think Dyer probably wasn't at his best because I think he maybe had to work that little bit harder and sort of try and second guess a lot of the time what Carroll was up to. Whereas when he's playing with Ali especially, or Dembele, I think the understanding has developed already to a point where they sort of know what each other's going to do, and I do think that showed yesterday.
Yeah, I agree with you. Onomah, for me, had a great game, cracking game against Monaco in the week. One of the standout players in that game, and certainly filled you with optimism, didn't it, for the future? It's a strange one, and I guess it was a difficult decision. It's very easy to say in hindsight what we would have done, what I would have done. But it does seem strange when Ali and Dyer have worked so well in there throughout the season.
I think what Pochettino might have been thinking is, when he's not playing against Xavi and Iniesta yesterday, was he?
Yeah.
Tom Carroll, you know what I mean? So maybe it was like a low risk game, if you like, of giving him a start in the Premier League, and it was his first Premier League start ever, I believe.
Yes.
He's playing against Anita and Colback, who really you would have backed Tom Carroll and Eric Dyer to come out well on top against those two, really.
Yeah, it's a fair point, mate, that you make there. And, as I say, it's very easy to judge in hindsight. Jace, we mentioned already Christian Eriksen. It's hard to criticise the guy, isn't it, when last season he dug us out of so many holes. He was a standout player for us. Even this season he scored a few free kicks for us. But he does have that tendency, doesn't he, to go missing, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, he's certainly in a disappointing run of form at the moment, and it was even more disappointment that he was one that got a 90-minute rest against Monaco. So, you couldn't use the Thursday night hangover or anything for Eriksen, but it's certainly a long time now since you'd say he had a really good game. I mean, even in the West Ham game, he had 20-30 minutes at the start of the game when he was actually really poor against West Ham. So, and we are missing the goals that he was, last year. We remember it with the goals at Hull and Swansea and Leicester and places like that, where he was digging us out of games, wasn't he? But he has gone missing, and you're reaching a stage where do you leave him out for a couple of games?
Yeah, it's a dilemma, and again with the youth coming through, maybe it's the perfect chance now to give him a bit of a rest. Who knows? I mean, on that theme of giving players a rest, Ricky, there was a lot of talk even on Sunday on social media of the players looking tired. Now, I'm looking at that thinking, how can these guys be tired when so many players are midweek? Can that be used as a fair argument?
I don't think you can, Andy. I mean, the fact of the matter is 7 out of those 12 players didn't start the game. I just fathomed, I can't really... Listen, I understand that, it's evident based on results when you look at Spurs and Liverpool over the years of playing in the Europa League, that the Sunday form does, suffer because of the Europa League. And I think also what you need to take into account is, and I've said this a lot, especially when Spurs are playing at home on a Sunday, the results of the Saturday games seem to impact on the crowd. And what I mean by that is that if the results on the Saturday don't go in Spurs' favour or do go in Spurs' favour, there's an expectancy at White Hart Lane based on the teams that we're playing to just turn up and roll them over. Now, yesterday at the Lane, I personally felt, and some have got their own opinions. I mean, I wasn't there, but in terms of watching it on the TV, I felt the crowd were fantastic in the first half. Really, really energetic, loud, got behind the players. And second half, it just seemed to die off a little bit. And with that, Newcastle, they kept believing they could get back into the game. And you just felt at 1-1, there was still enough time to win the game for Spurs. There was still 15, 20 minutes where Newcastle, they're not a fantastic side. So if you did rock the boat and push them, there was going to be that opportunity where you just hope the fans would have got behind the players right at the end to kind of give us that kind of grand finale finish where we could hopefully go on to win the game. But I can't really make an excuse for the players yesterday because, like we've said, 7 out of the 11 players out there, were fresh legs. And also from a defensive point of view, you look at it, we were quite fresh defensively. Like as we've said, Eriksen, one of our key players that we do rely on to bring us that kind of creativity, had, a rest during the week and therefore should have been fit and fresh for this game. The same as Kane. Kane had quite a considerable, rest during the week, although he did come on towards the end. I don't know. It just seemed like there was just that lack of competitiveness towards the end, and Pochettino did allude to that. And I think as a Spurs fan, that's quite concerning because one thing this season we've always done, wherever we've gone, we've always given 100%. And I don't think we could say that yesterday. I think for the first time yesterday, we just seem to lack that kind of desire to go and kill the game. And we just took our foot off the pedal. And that's what Kane said after the game on social media. I don't know the reason for it, but both Vertonghen and Dyer have come out after the game yesterday and they've both stressed this was a one-off. This is a different Spurs. And, time will inevitably tell.
It is a strange one. And there were so many, as I say, performances that were below par yesterday. It's hard to single out any one player that was maybe to blame. I mean, we've even talked about, previous to the podcast, we were speaking about Lloris was below par. The defence again, and slightly worrying with the defence. I mean, they've had a great season up till now, but the last couple of games they've looked out of sorts. Vertonghen and Alderweireld, I think going back to Karabag where there was a few mistakes, there was a bit of comical defending in that game, and again yesterday in the second half they almost looked like strangers in parts of the game. Newcastle were overrunning them, and again Harry Kane, love the guy to bits, but again yesterday, strange, very, very strange. John, you're our Mr. Optimism on the podcast. Is this just a blip, or is there anything more worrying about yesterday's game, do you think?
Did we not win 6-1?
Put it into some context for us, mate.
Yeah, I think I'd like to think it was a one-off. And we've said before, like Ricky just said there, I'd like to touch on again. We always seem to be, because we're playing the Europa on a Thursday, we're always the chasers and not when we're not being chased. And he's spot on there. I just think that there's a couple of performances, a few performances really that were subpar. And I reckon it's probably just because of a lack of competition for those. In terms of Eriksen knows he's going to start every week. And I hate to say this, but Lloris, I absolutely love Hugo Lloris, but he really didn't cover himself in glory yesterday. And I think that may be a direct consequence as well of, he knows he's going to play every week. And the same with Harry Kane. And you think those are probably our 3 most important players. A couple of the players you can sort of take for granted. Toby's going to be on his game every week. He's been superb every game. And I just think it was, I don't know. I mean, maybe Newcastle's become our new bogey team. But also, as the guys have touched on already, where we didn't seem to content with a point. I think a lot of it is because, the players know we have drawn too many games. And they know that they are capable from last season of getting the last-minute winner. I think, especially at home, you want to go out and try and do that. And really, if as I said, if Hugo was on his game, we'd certainly, the second goal certainly wouldn't have gone in. That was, looking back on it now, I'm sure he's feeling quite bad about it. But yeah, I mean, we'll see, won't we, whether it's a one-off. But we've said before, off air, that we're sort of in a backwards kind of way, looking forward to a defeat just to see what kind of reaction we get due to this long unbeaten run we've had. And maybe it just might be proven that, it becomes like we've got a monkey off our back now and we'll start again fresh and see how we get on. Yeah,
I mean, Jace, we sort of jokingly towards full time yesterday when it was looking like a draw. I sort of made a comment about, here we go, another draw. I'd bite your hand off now for a draw if you offered me it. It's maybe in a warp way the defeat may be a good thing in terms of giving them a bit of a reality call and maybe something that might spur them on to go and get a few wins.
Well, certainly this week, I don't think I've seen title challengers mentioned after our name in the last couple of days. So that's one good thing. And yeah, maybe that the fact that we have finally lost a game does stop people talking about the unbeaten run. And then you start to focus on the mistakes the team are making. You look at it and you think it is only 6 wins. And so it just shows you how much work you've still got to do, despite all the good work that's actually gone in. So, and perhaps there was a little bit of complacency at half-time yesterday as well. The players thought 1-0 up, White Hart Lane. As I say, we went into that half-time on the back of a really good 10 or 15 minutes, and perhaps they just come out and expected things to happen. And we had a bit of a shock when Newcastle said, no, OK, we're up for the fight as well. And, it was the equalising goal, what I couldn't understand was that nobody was with Colaccini the entire time. Nobody was, it's not even as if he lost a marker. There was nobody with him for the entire time. And the other worrying thing with that is that surely somebody was given Colaccini to mark before the game. And you think, number one, he's obviously not done his job. But number two, even the likes of Toby and Jan have surely got to be looking around thinking, well, hold on a minute. You were given the job to mark Colaccini, and they've got to be shouting at somebody at that start, or even Hugo. Why is he on his own? But he didn't even lose a marker, did he, for the goal? That was a really strange goal to concede. With Eric Dyer's goal, he lost Colaccini, but nobody was with him the entire time. I couldn't understand that at all. So, there was a communication breakdown there, that's for sure as well.
Yeah.
And then to see Hugo, I don't quite know what Hugo did for the first goal. He just kind of fell backwards into the net doing a backward roll. It's as if he'd been shot or something at first. And, Dyer just was on his knees, and Toby never looked like they were all trying to leave the ball to each other as well, wasn't it? It was a shambolic goal to concede. Really poor goal.
Is that maybe, Jace, is that maybe our big weakness in having someone like Lloris as captain, do you think, in that you haven't got that leader out on the pitch itself to maybe, grab the players by the scruff of the neck when you need that leader out there? Is that maybe the weakness in having the goalkeeper as captain, do you think?
Well, you'd think that, that is definitely a disadvantage when you've got the ball or the ball's in the other team's half. But from a corner or defending a free kick, which we were on the edge of our box, that's when, Hugo's role as the leader should actually come into it even more, that he can see everything in front of him. It's his job to organise the back four at set pieces and make sure everyone's in the right position. And he just didn't do it yesterday. And as I say, a number of players must have switched off. Whoever was given that job just was nowhere near on the job, were they? It was awful defending.
Yeah, it was sort of comical at times, and that's my one worry over the last few games has been the defending. Certainly not up to the standards that Toby and Jan set early on in the season, which was fantastic. It is a strange one because we've got the Sunday-Thursday argument in there that we've mentioned already. Is that having an effect? Are the players tired? Are there too many changes? Such a delicate balance to get, isn't it? And maybe let's hope that this is a reality check that they needed. Maybe they were getting a bit carried away with the praise that's been aimed towards them this season, which has been fantastic. But maybe they needed a bit of a wake-up call that we're maybe not as good as we ourselves think. Lots of talk about the top four, as we've mentioned. Lots of talk about winning the league, pie in the sky stuff. But maybe this will bring them back down to earth. And we saw, didn't we, Liverpool celebrating a draw as if they'd just won the Champions League on Saturday. So, listen, let's just hope that something good can come from it. Ricky, you've got some responses from the guys on the e-Spurs Twitter account.
Okay, so the comments I've had with regards to yesterday's game was I've got Jason Rumpen at JRumpun. Everyone looks tired, hence off form. I've got Alex at Gickman. You guys have to talk about Eriksen's place in the team. He's been inconsistent for weeks now. I think that's been one we've covered tonight with regards to Eriksen. We've got Matt Ford at MattFord87 who says, you could see Newcastle coming back into the second half. Changes should have been made earlier, nowhere near good enough. I have to say on that point, I don't know what you guys think. I just think, unfortunately, you look at the bench and there's no real game changer on there. Or, as we've alluded to in the last show, not having a Berahino or a recognised second striker to bring on. We all seem to allude to the fact when the window closed in the summer that this would be our downfall. And I just think, boys, I think you might agree that, it's coming back to haunt us now. 8 draws out of a possible 16, that's half the games. And you just think, if we could have turned some of those draws into wins, where would we be now? Yeah,
Rick, I'm still not sure Son's the one. I mentioned this last week, and obviously he hasn't had the game time that others have had. But in the time that we've seen him, apart from that first game where he sort of came in and made an instant impact, didn't he? Apart from that, I mean, his shots yesterday were awful, weren't they?
I have to agree, Andy. Yeah, the problem we've got here, Andy, is Son is not a natural centre forward, and as much as everyone wants to try and dress it up and call him a support to the striker, at the end of the day, the guy is going to be judged on goals, because unfortunately we was told he was bought primarily to be as a support for Kane, and it doesn't matter whether you want to go on the website and move him to the forward section. At the end of the day, he's either a striker or he isn't, and you can clearly see the guy technically looks very, very gifted, but it is going to take him time to also adapt to the league. And for me personally, I have to agree with you, Andy. Yesterday, you would at least ask him to hit the target, which he didn't do. And I think NG, who we've touched upon on the numerous shows we've done so far, I think he looks very, very raw. I don't think he looks like he's ready yet. And, he's going to have to get experience. But the problem is, as you know, boys, that we can only do that whilst on the job. And I think that's the issue we've got here. Players are having to learn game by game. And unfortunately, by doing that also, we're throwing them in games where we also need to get results. So it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, what do? We can only rotate as much as we can. Pochettino wants to have a consistent 11 in the Premier League like he's shown. But one last final one here I've got on the social media is Richard Chung at _Richard Chung, who says, just weren't clinical enough. Kane is misfiring, and we missed Dembele badly, which I think, again, finally we've already touched upon.
Yeah, some great points, guys, and all saying basically what we've already mentioned about the lack of competition in there, and a little bit more urgency needed from the guys. Jace, any final thoughts on the game yesterday?
Just move on. One of those, I think,
Yeah,
one of those things that I think, in a course of 38 game season, I think every team has their 1 or 2 days where you just think, what the hell are we watching? And I just hope it was one of those days rather than the start of a bad run. We'll only find that out in time. But I think it's just one. There were so many poor performances. You have to look at your mistakes, accept that you've made them, and say, big improvement needed, reality check time, and hopefully just move on and put it behind us.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear the responses of the guys out there on the social media. John, any final thoughts on yesterday's game?
Yeah, I just wanted to defend Son a little bit. I mean, obviously I understand what Ricky said, and he's bang on. His shooting accuracy's not been great. But then I think he's another one of those kind of players like Eriksen and Lamela that if they're not scoring goals, they need to be assisting goals. And you got to say that Son, he has done that. On Thursday, I didn't think he was great particularly, but he still managed to chip in with 2 assists. And he is that kind of player that when he's on the pitch, I think he was bought more for his work rate and what he brings to the team. Really, he does smack of a Pochettino player, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
the work rate's great. He's athletic. He's a good footballer as well, really. But I just think he's one of them where maybe he had a little bit more time on the ball in Germany and he's snatching at things a little bit at the moment. But in time, that will come. And also with Clinton, I think he looked all right on Thursday against Monaco. I reckon he'll turn into a player. But like we've already said, the only way you can... It's not really like you can get practice elsewhere unless they're going out on loan, but they can't because they're too important to us.
Well,
so we'll see. Come January 31st, if we've got a striker, which I'm sure we will have. Although I'm not sure Berahino knows the answer at the minute. He's played 90 minutes once this season in the league, so but that might drop the price, so that might be more likely as Levy might have to pay a little bit less for him.
I was going to say, I'm sure that appeals to Daniel Levy. Anything to do with dropping of prices. And on NG there, we should give him credit because, of course, on Thursday he did have a really good game. I was impressed with his movement, some great touches. Impressed with them all, in fact, on Thursday. Really great to see the young side doing so well. And on Son, let's hope, as you say, John, that in time he'll come good. And it's difficult because we can't be like Chelsea, can we? We can't loan out 32 youngsters. We haven't got the resources to do that. We can't just buy players for the sake of hoarding them. So it is difficult. You've got to give players experience at Spurs rather than loaning them out because we haven't got 32 youngsters to be able to do that with. So he's got that dilemma. In saying that, it's lovely to see them coming through at Spurs rather than doing it at another club. So there's pros and cons either way, I guess, but some really good points. Ricky, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I just say, again, again, like the lads have said, really, all we can do is move on and hope it's an off day. And like I reiterated earlier, both Vertonghen and Dyer have come out and said, look, this is a different Spurs. Yesterday was a one-off. Hopefully that is the case. And the last time we suffered a defeat, look, we went on a 14-game unbeaten run. But like I keep being reminded, although 8 of them have been draws, let's hope we can turn the draws into wins. But the final point I did want to say on yesterday, and I'm not sure if other people echo the same thoughts as mine, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting we drop him, but Vertonghen for me, when he's defending one-on-one, he seems to look very, very isolated and seems disadvantaged to the opponent. Now, we saw Mahrez get the better of him on the goal we conceded against Leicester. We saw the same thing yesterday against Perez. Now, for me personally, Vertonghen is a bit more as an emotive centre-back. He's a very emotive player. Depending on who he plays alongside, like we saw last season, when he played alongside Kabul, he looked very, very ineffective, didn't look like a great defender. This season, we've seen the better side to him because he's playing along a reliable centre-back with Toby, who's very composed on the ball. And I feel at times, Toby's composure covers up Vertonghen's play at times. Now, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting to drop him because I think they have formed a formidable partnership, as the defensive record suggests. But what I am saying is for Vertonghen, that has to be part of his game that he looks to improve, because other teams will start clicking onto that. You know, as we saw the other week when we played against West Brom, Rondon in the first 15 minutes completely roasted Vertonghen. Now, he's not going to get the better of every striker on all occasions, but all you want to see is that he throws his body in the way and, you know, doesn't give a striker an easy test. But listen, like we said, it is still quite a new partnership. We're only 16 games in. Generally, they played quite well. I want to put yesterday down as an off day, and fingers crossed we can get back on track against Southampton.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you said, Ricky, but I would say when you mention the word composure, I think they use and show composure in 2 different ways. Jan Vertonghen is very, very much the better player on the ball, whereas Toby is a lot more composed whilst defending. I understand what you're saying, but with the ball, Toby will either be a short one to the right back or a long Michael Dawson-esque punt. Now, I think that's probably why they have been good as a partnership, in as much as one's strength is the other's weakness. But if they can find the right balance, I also would say that Kevin Wimmer, again, he was another one that really impressed me on Thursday.
Yeah.
He looks just like a younger Jan Vertonghen the way he plays football, but he's probably better at defending on the ground. And I reckon he could be, I think he's 6 years younger than Jan, so he could be the next one there, really. You know, he plays on that left side, he's very much left-footed. I do think he's a better defender when it comes to actually tackling than Vertonghen, but I think he's such a roller of a player. Yeah, and I think he's such a good footballer that a lot of the time he was a bit shaky yesterday. I'm not going to deny that, but I just think that them two as a partnership, as we said last week, they are blinding, I think, and stick with them. I think everyone can have a bad day. It's just there was too many of them that did so yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple players, aren't there, from yesterday? And we mentioned on the podcast earlier on in the season about them being the best defensive partnership in the Premier League. So, you know, in fairness to them, they're a huge asset to us. So let's hope it continues. And a new feature that we've got on the show for you guys out there. We want you guys to get involved in the show. And one way to do that is our new Talking Point feature. Now, every week we'll be coming up with a topic of the week, a talking point, if you like. And it's down to you guys to get in touch with us on our social media, so our Twitter and our Facebook, to let us know what you guys think. Those responses will then be read out on the following week's show. So it's your chance to get involved and get your responses into us. Now, if you respond to the Talking Point feature, all you have to do is give us your response to the question of the week on the Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag e-SpursTP, so e-Spurs Talking Point. Your responses, as I say, will then be read out on the following week's show. And this week, John's come up with a great topic for the e-Spurs Talking Point. John?
Yeah, the question I would like to ask our listeners is, in the Premier League era, has there been a player who we as a collective fan base have loved as much as we love our current number 10, young Harry Kane?
Love it. Great question. And get your thinking caps on out there. I'm already thinking away. I'm sure the lads are doing the same, but we won't get the response of the lads just yet. We'll wait till next week to get those, along with you guys out there. Don't forget hashtag eSpursTP if you send in your answer, your response, if you like. to the talking point this week on our Facebook or Twitter page, and we'll read as many as we can out from those on next week's show. Great stuff. So onwards and upwards, lads, to the Europa League draw. First up, we'll come to the FA Cup draw in just a moment, but as the Europa League draw happened just today, a few hours ago, let's start with that. Guess who we drew? Well, how can you describe them? Last year's nemesis, if you like, Fiorentina. We're back in Italy, another Italian job. Jace, you could see it coming, couldn't you? We've got Fiorentina again. Are we in a better place this year to face them?
I don't know if we're so much in it. I think the fact that we won't have a Capital One Cup final, which is always immediately after the second leg, would help, because you obviously had the selection problems last year. I'm actually quite pleased we've got a tough draw, because I think if you're going to win the competition, you're going to have to beat the best teams. And it's such a long competition. If you're not going to win it, you better to get knocked out as in the early rounds. And if you get knocked out by a decent side, you don't come under quite as much criticism. So I think, I hope we do win it, and I'd love us to go on. But if we then do get knocked out and we save ourselves another 7 or 8 games further down the line, then it also wouldn't be such a bad thing. But looking at Fiorentina this year, third in the Italian league, played 16 and they've already won 10. They've only lost once at home. They're third in the table. So they're obviously performing pretty well, although they only finished second in the group behind Basel. But last year's problems came from Salah and Mario Gomez, and both of those aren't at the club anymore. So, they probably don't look quite as strong as they did last year, although their league form suggests they're still a very, very good side. Looking at some of the reaction on Twitter, obviously the draw wasn't that long ago. So we've got Robert at Sonderated, who thinks we'll win both matches. Joe Mack _ Joe Mack 86, very tough but even, could go either way. Matt Ford at Matt Ford 87, just typical for Spurs to get the hardest draw compared to Man United and Liverpool. Although I have to say I haven't even noticed Man United and Liverpool's in there. I only look at the big teams. And Jason Rumpen at J Rumpen, how did we get Fiorentina again? Do they still have any Chelsea rejects bound to perform against us? Well, no, Salah is definitely not there anymore. And he's not just been a nemesis to us with Fiorentina, has he? He's been a Europa League nemesis to us, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We've come up against him a few times, didn't we? And strong rumours that he was going to join us at one point. But it's going to be tricky, isn't it? It's not the easiest draw in the world, but personally, I love these sorts of fixtures. This is what European football's all about for me, facing the likes of the Fiorentinas and the Napolis and the Milans. It's fantastic stuff. Jace, we're 18-1, best price at the bookies at the moment, behind the likes of Man United, Liverpool, Dortmund. Could the key in this year's tie be the fact that we've got the second leg at home as opposed to away?
I don't so much think that the second legs used to be really important, but when teams used to go and park the bus away from home and try and get them back. But I think football's changed a lot now, and I think when you look at two-legged ties now, I think I'm right in saying there's more teams that have won from having the first leg at home in recent years in both the Europa League and the Champions League than have had it second. So I don't think it matters now at all. I think that the key point for us with the second leg is there's no Capital One Cup final to have to rotate around.
Yeah, certainly no selection dilemma for Pochettino this year. You'd think he'd go, John, with the strongest side, surely.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah, and you two disappointed me a little bit there. I was thinking that it'd be a massive plus compared to last season that we're at home second. Just because, last year I was at the first leg and we really could have been about 4-0 up before they equalised, and they just cancelled us out for the rest of the game. It was very disappointing, really, the way we went out. And obviously, like we said, it was because we had our eye taken off the ball, really, because of the League Cup final. But I'm hoping this time that, we owe them one, don't we? So let's hope we knock Leicester out the FA Cup and knock Leicester out Fiorentina out the Europa League. I'm sure our odds will change, to be fair. Liverpool and Man United are only shorter odds because they're playing against easier sides. But I wouldn't expect Man United to try anything apart from the kids, really, in their game.
Yeah, there's moans and groans and grumbles already coming from Old Trafford about Thursday night football. Lovely to see, isn't it?
Just looking at the draw, we have Manchester City away before the first leg, and then there's only 1 week between the first and second leg. after the first leg, it's FA Cup round 5 day, of which we may or may not be involved. So it's, we could possibly have a complete week between the two legs, and then straight after the second leg, we'd be at home to Swansea. So, almost a bit like the Newcastle game. We should have a relatively comfortable home game, but we've just seen what could happen.
Well, yeah, and just actually going to talk along those lines. Ricky, is it sometimes, I mean, we've seen what happened on Sunday. Would you rather Spurs face a bigger club, if you like, against the likes of Fiorentina rather than face a Midtjylland? Is it sometimes a case of, they might be over complacent facing a smaller club, whereas against Fiorentina, they'll be up for it, all guns blazing?
Andy, I'm totally along your viewpoint, the way you think about this competition. For me, it's all about facing the best teams. That's what it's like being in Europe.
Yeah.
As a Spurs fan growing up, for me, I supported the team over a decade. For me personally, all I want to see Spurs do is play against the best teams. And for me, there's no point playing against, no disrespect, I don't want to play against, a team in Latvia or a team, in Middle East. I'd want to play against an established name that everybody knows, and then you've got the credit to say, if you get as far as you can in the competition, to say, look who we beat along the way, look who we beat on the journey. And that's what it's like. These are nights like this when you can beat, teams of such quality like a Milan, like a Fiorentina. These nights, they stay with you because you remember, the performances of certain players on the night that give you, that pride of being a Spurs fan. For me personally, still, there's nothing like European nights at the Lane. And I don't know why people just feel this attitude that, for me personally, I still relish being in Europe, and I don't think there should ever be a time where we feel that we're too good to not consider Europa League football. As much as we dream and aspire to be in the Champions League, I still feel the Europa League is a decent competition, and we should be going all out to win it. We should be putting our full strength team out to win the competition. We've seen this year with the way the league has gone. Yes, we have an opportunity to break into that top four, but there is no guarantee or given that we are going to finish in that top four, and that's why we should take the Europa League as seriously as possible, because Spurs, as we've seen this season, we've beaten Man City, we gave Arsenal a game at the Emirates, we can beat anyone on our day, so there's no reason why we can't go as furthest as we can in this competition. And like the boys have echoed, we don't have the League Cup final this season to obviously be a distraction, so there's no reason why we can't go all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see, isn't it? Another big European night at the Lane. Let's hope the Lane's rocking for that one, because it is a huge night, and I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it'll be a fantastic atmosphere there, and let's hope we get the tide done and dusted before we even get to the Lane. Let's hope we get a few away goals, which, as we've seen to our cost a few times, a key in these sorts of ties. It could be a fantastic chance to get through, a bit of confidence over Fiorentina, a win there, fantastic, and onwards and upwards. And of course, another draw that took place recently since we last broadcast was the FA Cup draw. Another tough draw, Spursy, eh? We've got Leicester City at home. So I guess if there's one thing in our favour, it's the fact that we're at home. Jace, we're facing the informed side in the Premier League. Is it arguably the hardest draw?
I think it probably is, because it's not just a tough draw. It's a tough draw when you go back to last year when we were beaten by Leicester at home, of course, in the FA Cup. I think the other interesting part of the game is that we play them now twice in 4 days, don't we? Because we have them in the Premier League on the Wednesday, and I think the cup ties now moved to the Sunday game, isn't it? Haven't BBC chosen that? So it's 2 in 4 days, and it could be a big week. I think that one of the things that Poch got a little bit of flack for last year from fans, despite the fact that we were on the verge of a cup final with the Sheffield United semi-final at that time, was everyone blasted him for squad rotating and throwing away an FA Cup game when we lost it. So, be interesting to see what he does this year, because does he rotate for the FA Cup and possibly risk going out to a Leicester side when you've then got them on the Thursday night? But one of those nights, he'll probably be damned if you do, damned if you don't. If he picks a team and we then don't win the league game on the Wednesday, everyone will say, why did he play the full strength side in the cup tie? If he rotates in the cup tie like he did with Arsenal when you go out, everyone will blast him again. So it is difficult. I think it certainly shows you that we need to make 1 or 2 signings early in January, because it would be good to have a striker to come in for a cup tie rather than having to play Harry both times or mix and match with a Son or an NG up front.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I just think, we've mentioned a few times on this podcast, haven't we? I mean, Gary Lineker was playing, for God's sake, the last time we won the FA Cup. So that shows you how long ago, it is since we won the FA Cup. 8 times we'd won it at that stage, hadn't we? We'd won it more than any other club. Now they've, overtaken us and more. And it's just, it's hard to watch, isn't it, at times? And I mean, this is the FA Cup, for goodness sake. This is one of the biggest cup competitions in world football still. Whether or not people choose to mock it is their bag, but it'd be fantastic to get another FA Cup under our belts. And I mean, John, let's put this one to you, mate. Europa League or FA Cup? We're in both. Let's say in February. Which one for you takes priority if Poch is to prioritise one of the competitions?
Oh, that's such a tough question because obviously I'd say I'd be greedy and go full tilt at both, but I think it's interesting there talking to the guys. Obviously, in terms of how long we've been supporting Spurs, I'm somewhere in the middle between Ricky and Jace. And as a 5-year-old, I remember watching the FA Cup final in '91. That's my first really memories of watching Spurs. So I've been a fan for 25 years now, and it would be amazing to add a 9th one to that. The 8 we've already got, and I still think it's the best cup competition in the world, and we've been really bad in it the last few years. So I think to arrest that bad form in the FA Cup would be good. I mean, I was at the Leicester game last year. It was shocking. 1-0 up with 8 minutes to go or whatever it was. But I think if I'm right, Jace, I'm sure we play Leicester on the 20th in the league. So I think we have got a clear week between playing them in the Cup and playing Sunderland at home the following Saturday. So that might make a difference in terms of team selection. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, another thing I'd like to say as well, talking about being in Europe and that, this one's to Ricky. Being in Europe only ever happened if we went on pre-season tours to Wales or Ireland when I was younger. And we went through so many seasons where we even had to go at the Intertoto Cup, and for the first sort of 10, 15 years of me being a Spurs fan, we didn't do anything in Europe. So I still get quite excited about playing Tromso and things like that because it as much as all right, they're not established European names like you're saying, but I remember watching teams like Nottingham Forest and Norwich and teams like that playing in Europe in the mid-90s and thinking, I want a piece of this. And Blackburn and Newcastle and teams that haven't done anything since. And I just think it's a privilege to be in Europe, and I think people forget that. When you can only have 7 teams out of 92 to represent your country in Europe, you should take it bloody seriously, in my opinion. And I think we do have a real go at it, and the FA Cup this year. Obviously, it depends on the draw. And we might be saying, if Fiorentina knock us out, if only we didn't have that 5th round FA Cup draw away at Chelsea or somewhere to contend with as well. But yeah, no, if you push me, I'd say the FA Cup, just because we have got a rich history in that competition. It'd be lovely to, after so many years, to add another one to the trophy cabinet.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I'll come back to Ricky in just a moment to reply on that point. I just thinking back to '91 that you mentioned the cup final and everything that went with that day. I can remember exactly what I was doing in the morning of that game. I can remember after the game, I was in a working men's club at the time, everyone running into the street after the game. The street was chock-a-block just up from Tottenham High Road, and buses were tooting, there were people out in the road with flags. I mean, that's the FA Cup that I remember, It's not the FA Cup that Man United fielding kids in, not the FA Cup where people mock it. The FA Cup is a huge cup. Let's go for it and win it and get that record back again. Let's have some ambition, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll. Now we've seen Pochettino this season start to take the Europa League seriously. I think he'll do the same with the FA Cup, providing we've got that extra striker in there, as Jace has mentioned, to be able to give Kane a bit of a rest in there. I want it back, and we all do. I think that's what we all echo on the show. Ricky, did you want to come back on the point that John just made there, mate?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my message to John was just merely that from my perspective, when you get to this last, was it 16? What we are now? Last 32 of the Europa League. For me personally, I just take more kind of pleasure in playing a bigger side than I do a smaller side. For me, I'm exactly the same as what John is saying. I very much, it's a privilege for Spurs to be in Europe. I'm not getting away from that whatsoever at all. But if you pushed me and said to me, what kind of team would I like to face? I would like to face a highly established team rather than a team based in the Middle East or a team that nobody quite knows about. I would like to face, a team which holds some heritage. There's Dortmund's in there, there's Napoli in there, Fiorentina. They were once a very, very good Italian team. I'm sure many remember Batistuta. Pochettino, used to play with him, I think, so he knows himself. Fiorentina are a big club, and that's why, for me personally, I'm really looking forward to the draw. I know some think, I'd rather have an easier draw. For me, bigger draw the better. I want to beat the big teams along the way. So for me, bigger the better. But no, it's a privilege for Spurs to be in Europe, and we should never just take it for granted because, like John said there, not a huge amount of teams get the opportunity to represent England. So we need to be, flying the flag over here for sure. And just on your point there, Andy, what would I prefer, the FA Cup or the Europa League? I think one crucial thing has been missed out here, and that is that obviously winning the Europa League also gives you an invitation to the Champions League.
Yeah.
So I think, having said that, I would love to win the FA Cup because as a Spurs fan, unfortunately growing up, I've not been privileged enough to kind of see, or I've only really seen, I was very, very young when Spurs won the FA Cup. So for me personally, I would love to see us win England's biggest cup competition. But at the same time, I still think winning the Europa League, as many see it as a secondary competition, you see the way Chelsea celebrated winning that Europa League. That to me didn't seem like they were ashamed to win it, and we should be exactly the same. That is a big competition, and like we've said, you face many established teams along the way, teams that drop out the Champions League as well. So for me personally, I wouldn't mind winning either. If you had to push me and say which one, purely because of the Champions League kind of tie, I'd love to see us win the Europa League.
I think as well it has a bigger standing around, doesn't it? Other players or top players of other clubs, if you win the Europa League, would be much more noticeable to them than just winning the FA Cup. So it would definitely help you attract better players if you've got Champions League football in your scene then as a major European side.
Pochettino's not won any honours as a manager yet. And also, as far as the Europa League goes, we really do need to fly the flag for our country because it's really a battle of the coefficients because it's England against Italy, and we do need to. You'd think that Arsenal won't be going any further in the Champions League this season. Chelsea might not. So we do need to claw back some credibility for England and make sure we don't lose that fourth place.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even mentioned, John, have we? We're gutting to see the draw that lot down the road got today, wasn't it?
Well, it's just a shame that all them world-class players would have to play in that. And we've got to edit that bit out. I do apologise.
I'm sure Messi will try and feign an injury for that one. I'm sure,
Well, let's, like we said off air, it'd just be typical, wouldn't it, if they did it? But I can't see past Barcelona. And let's hope that PSG do a number on Chelsea as well.
Can you imagine Koscielny's reaction today, thinking, "Oh no, Suarez, Neymar, Messi"?
It's just lovely to see, isn't it, when you see Arsenal's name come out of the hat and then, drawn alongside it the likes of Barcelona, and the thought of Arsenal getting a complete thrashing just brings a smile to the face, doesn't it?
I just want to pick up on the fact the hysteria of Arsenal fans last week after they beat Olympiacos, just that hysteria of them going through Wenger's one of the greatest ever achievement, the Great Escape, like they were playing some kind of real big European giant. I mean, it was Olympiacos, for God's sake. We're not talking about, a Real Madrid or a Barcelona. So this for me is perfect. This carries on that kind of cycle where they genuinely believe some of their fans are deluded enough to think they're this elite club. And again, they get to the last 16 and fingers crossed, they bottle it.
Well, they're talking about cycles, Ricky. I see their 4-point plan is bang on target again. They finish fourth. They win the Emirates Cup. They get through their Champions League group, and then they get knocked out. So it's going to go on again, ain't it?
Just give it a week, lads, and they'll want Wenger out again. So it's never ending, is it, down there? Listen, lads, we've vastly running out of time. So God knows how we've squeezed everything into tonight's show, but we have, hopefully. You guys out there have enjoyed it. Still one more point to mention, which is, of course, next week's game against Southampton, away from home. And Southampton at the moment sitting 12th in the league, just looking up their stats. They lost, the last game against Palace at the weekend, 1-0. But before that, they had a run of good form, beat Swansea, beat Chelsea, of course. So nobody's mugs, although they're sitting 12th in the league mid-table. Let's go to Ricky on this one. Is this another game? We mentioned this last week, of course. Is this a game that we should be winning?
Well, Andy, you got to say, really, because of the results we've had, if someone said to you, out of West Brom and Newcastle, we'd only take a point, then I don't think they would have believed you based on how Spurs have been playing this season. So, I mean, because of that, I think we have to go there and look for a win. And listen, like you've said, it's not an easy place to go to. They're not a bad side, Southampton. However, for Spurs, we might just be facing them at the right time. You know, had a couple of disappointing results in the league. Like you said, they're no mugs. They've beaten Chelsea away from home. But again, Spurs do seem to play better away from home. I get that feeling that, you know, if we can go there and score the first goal and, you know, set the ascendancy, then, you know, we can win the game. But I think Spurs, this is going to be a very, very key game for us because everyone is waiting, like you boys have picked up on, after a defeat, how do we react? You know, we've got the youngest average age side in the league. Players already coming out saying that the defeat yesterday against Newcastle was a one-off, and we're now going to see whether these players have got that kind of character now to bounce back, because everyone now is starting to say, same old Spurs, you know, always let you down. There's a chance now for these players to prove that that was a one-off against Newcastle and to get back on the horse and, you know, to get back amongst the wins. Because as much as it is good, you know, seeing an unbeaten run, let's be honest, 8 draws out of a possible 16, you know, we need to see a consistency of wins now, and hopefully that can start at Southampton. So, yeah, I think we can go there and win. But again, it's all about the mentality on the day. If we turn up and we are, you know, if we go there with the same kind of mentality that we did at the Emirates, you know, they will not stand a chance. But it is very much how about we turn up on the day. So, yeah, I'm confident. Hopefully 3 points.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rick. I got a feeling about this one. Just got that feeling that we'll go out there and win. And, of course, Pochettino going back there will be a factor in that. John, do our top 4 hopes depend on us getting a result at Southampton, do you think?
Well, it certainly help. I mean, the sooner we start winning games, the better. And as we're going into the most congested period of the season, then if we can get to, by the time we play Everton in the new year, if we're in a decent position, then we have picked up maybe 3 wins. You never know. Not that I'm predicting that to happen, by the way, people. Don't panic.
You heard it here first, yeah.
I think, you usually find out that a lot of teams get found out this time of year, don't you? I mean, chances are Leicester might start to slip away, and maybe hopefully we can replace them in the top 4. But yeah, I think a lot of it just depends on this period, really. If we can get through it and everyone remains fit and the players start to hit form again, and I think it could help us, really. I think last season everything sort of tailed off when we stopped playing 3 games in a week for some strange reason. Maybe the players prefer playing to training, but as we saw this week, you know, you give some of the top players a week off, and it takes them a while to get warmed up and ready and back into the groove. Maybe playing games thick and fast helps us. Maybe with the young legs, like we've said, maybe that's what they'll thrive in, that environment, especially playing against, if we are the youngest, every other team is older, naturally. Not by much, obviously, but maybe that makes a difference as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and maybe the system that we play, the style of football suits the younger players. The pressing football, you know, you need the extra, you know, stamina, the extra legs in there to be able to play that style of football. Jace, in terms of the game next weekend against Southampton, would you make any changes from the defeat against Newcastle?
I certainly think, as harsh as it probably is after just one game, but I'd be astonished if Tom Carroll gets another start. And then it'll be interesting to see whether, because Chadley will be back, you know, Chadley will have had a proper week then, and, you know, the fact that he's come on the last couple of games, he'll be up for selection. And it wouldn't surprise me to see one more change further up the pitch. But because I think Pochettino has tended to be a Chadley fan, hasn't he? When Chadley's been fit, he's tended to play in most games more than he hasn't. So, yeah. And I also think the other problem with Chadley is that in his time at Tottenham, he's definitely not a substitute impact player, is he? I think he's a type of boy that needs to grow into a game and he needs to start games. So I could see Chadley probably coming back as well.
If I could jump in there, I think that's why we've seen such an upturn in Eric Lamella's performances, because with what you just said about Chadley there, Jace, I think Lamella is he typifies exactly what you just said. If you bring him on, there ain't much chance he'll do much, but give him a go from the start consistently, and that's where he seems to have picked up. I think he's consistently starting games this season more than he ever has while he's been at Tottenham, and we're reaping the rewards, in my opinion, and that's probably why, because get him on from the start, and 9 times out of 10 he'll have a good game.
Chadley's a strange old player, isn't he? I mean, there's times when he goes through a game and you think, what does he contribute in that? But the bloke has got goals in him, isn't he? I mean, he got double figures last year, and he's already got a couple this year. And I think, you know, when we're relying on Kane to be scoring goals, the fact that Chadley can bring goals from a different area is definite advantage for him as well.
Well, I reckon that's why you might be right, mate. I can see him starting on at the weekend as well, just for that reason. He can be anonymous, but like when we beat Chelsea 5-3, he was brilliant, and he's had a few other games where he's been spot on, and he does provide a goal for it, like you said.
Mm.
Yeah, he certainly knows where the goal is. We saw him, pre-season, cracker he scored, didn't he? So, let's hope we see him back soon. I tell you what, lads, let's get some predictions across the board if we can, starting with Ricky.
Okay, lads, I'm going to go for 2-1 Spurs.
2-1, so a nice 2-1 away win. John?
I predict that the game will last for 90 minutes plus stoppage time. And that is it. I've got nothing else to add.
We'll start calling you Mystic John. Let's go to Jace.
Yeah, well, I said with Newcastle, if we score first, they'll fold, and it'll be quite comfortable once we got the first goal. So my punditry's not too good, but yeah, I might go for a 2-1, the same as Ricky did. Yeah. But I won't say which way round it'll be.
Maybe wise. Obviously went to the Alan Hansen School of Punditry, Jace.
As long as I didn't go to Michael Owen's punditry.
No, the Michael Owen or the Phil Neville School of Punditry, I think. That's the only one worse I can think of than Michael Owen. But listen, lads, as always, been an absolute pleasure. Brilliant show tonight. I hope you guys out there have enjoyed it. We've squeezed as much as we can into the last hour. And, of course, we want you guys to let us know what you think about the show, about what the guys out there have said. If you agree, disagree on anything that's been said tonight, give us a message on Twitter or Facebook at @e_Spurs. The Facebook is /e_Spurs, page or one word. And of course, don't forget the new talking point feature. That's #eSpursTP. If you want to reply to that one, it was the question that Jason set earlier. Have we loved any player in the last 25 years more than our very own Harry Kane? Let us know what you think. #eSpursTP. That'll be running every week from now on for you guys to get in touch and get involved with the show. We'll be back after Southampton at the weekend. My thanks to Jason, John and Ricky. Of course, you've now got their Twitter accounts, so get in touch with the guys. Other than that, guys, have a great week. And as always, come on you Spurs.
I suppose it's never stopping over.